Last Sunday at Speaker's Corner, which was the 18th of June 2023, was the day that multiple Muslims got violent at Speaker's Corner, all because they lost a debate. Let's talk about exactly what events led up to this, how this happened, and we'll take it from there. Like most Sundays, Bob of Speaker's Corner had got into a debate with a particular Muslim. The person Bob was arguing with was someone who was a sheikh. He was Sheikh Dr. Abdul Rahman Dimashqua? Either way, it's this guy. And this doesn't seem to be just a nobody either, or someone who isn't well known in circles. This, after all, is a sheikh, so it's a man of knowledge. He should know what he's talking about. Remember that. He's also someone of whom has 60,000 subscribers on YouTube, seems to teach Aqidah as well as other Islamic topics to students who want to have his knowledge. So evidently this man knows his stuff. Let's continue. So the Sheikh and Bob are debating and the crowd forms around. And like most times at Speaker's Corner, the crowd has a mixed audience of both Muslims, Christian, onlookers, tourists, atheists, whoever it might be, but it skews more into the Muslim favor. I want you to take note of these specific Muslims. This guy, and this guy. We're going to be focusing on these later on. So the debate starts and the Sheikh brings up the particular verse in Galatians chapter 3 verse 13 where it says that Jesus became a curse for us. And his particular understanding of this is that he was cursed by the Father, and therefore this is bad, this is an insult, this is why he can never be a Christian. Wob retorts back by saying, "You worship a fickle God." And this comes from Surah 43, Ayah 81, where Allah explicitly says that Muhammad should say, if Allah did indeed have a son, Muhammad would be the first to worship him, which inadvertently has basically said, well, if the Christian position is correct, then you ought to adopt the Christian position. Quite awkward for many Muslims, but nonetheless a statement you can find in the Quran. For most of this debate, both people genuinely follow rules. There's a lot of people who interrupt, like Sam Dawa. There are other members in the crowd who say things, but generally speaking, both speakers stick to the rules. And the debate's going as recorded. They eventually move on to like a time debate where they set up a set period of time for each speaker to have allocated time to speak for, and it goes fine. But then eventually something changes. The temperature starts to go up a little bit, and I think this comes in when the timing thing breaks down. Both of them are speaking, trying to get their points across, but then all of a sudden, Bob seems to have got under the skin of the Sheikh. The Sheikh doesn't have any way of dealing with this. He doesn't have any good comeback. He doesn't have any good argument. So he's left with the strategy of, well, I'm just going to push you. And you can see in this clip that that's exactly what happens.
Turning away from you.
Speak to me.
Let's talk then.
Okay.
So,
He said,
now,
"I insult
let's
you."
ask,
He said, "I
answer the
insult
question.
you, but I insult
Why
Jesus."
did Muhammad teach that?
No.
Don't push.
Oi.
Don't push. Don't push.
Oi.
Don't push.
Keep your hands.
Hey. Back off.
The one who instigated this is clearly the Sheikh. The Sheikh got upset, got emotional, he didn't know how to handle it, so he got violent. And you can look at Muslim comments on Muslim videos that acknowledge this all over the place, left, right, and center. They know full well that their guy messed up. He should not have got angry, he should not have lost his temper, but he did. Muslims need to own that. This isn't too uncommon either. We've seen many different cases of violence at Speaker's Corner. I don't think anyone's particularly surprised by this with the amount of videos Christian and non-Christian channels put up, sometimes even Muslim channels, pointing out, hey, there's a lot of violence going on by one particular community here, and it's not the Quakers, it's not the Mormons, it's not the Ahmadiyas, it seems to be Sunni Muslims. Nonetheless, things break down very quickly after this. Bob pushes the Sheikh back, telling him stop pushing. He repeatedly says stop pushing after that for the next 10 seconds or so. Meanwhile, remember the people that I pointed out before? They all of a sudden get triggered, and I mean that in the fullest sense of the term, and decide they now want to get violent with Bob. There's the guy who was standing, I think either just behind or just to the right of the Sheikh. He decides he's going to get violent. There's the guy wearing the red cloak, I'm not sure what word this is, but he's wearing something red, and he decides he's going to push Bob. So JC, the cameraman, he stepped in, he tried to calm things down. You can tell by his body language, you can tell by the fact that he's not immediately pushing, but of course he gets pushed by one of the Muslims, and so he pushes back after One of the Muslims was so triggered that in order to get to Bob, he just pushed through like dawah cameras. So these dawah cameras just sort of fell to the floor, no concern whatsoever for all of their hard work and efforts that go into the dawah. So at this point, Bob and JC are pushed over, they trip, they fall to the ground, and then this delightful little chap, who I've seen before, who I had to intervene with when he decided he wanted to get a little bit aggressive, just a little bit aggressive with Uncle Azif. He decided he was going to take the opportunity to start kicking people, particularly, I think it was JC, might have been Bob, either one, it was one of those two. He decided to try kick them, and you can see some footage here of him trying to do that. So now you've got two things going on. You had these guys pushing, which were these two particular Muslims. Now you've got this guy trying to kick some Christians. Now while all this is happening, you've got that original sheikh, remember him? He's now decided he wants some of the action. Now he's got a walking stick, by the way, so this guy's meant to be disabled. He's not meant to be in the best of physical condition, but he's going around speeding around with his walking stick, descending upon raising the stick, descending upon unsuspecting Christians in the crowd, particularly I think Bob, in an attempt at hitting Bob with his walking stick. So this guy has gone from timid sheikh who doesn't know how to control his temper to full-blown jihad through walking stick mode. This kicks off another fight because another Christian brother who is standing next to him decides that he's not going to tolerate that, so he grabs the walking stick off him, which in turn encourages other Muslims around him to get violent with him. So this is what blessed are the peacemakers. For Islam, not so much. The Christian brother, who was now being under attack by multiple Muslims, including the sheikh, is now doing everything possible, crouching down to avoid the incoming hits, including the guy in the red that we saw before, who has now decided to kick him. We also now have a weird situation with one of the cameramen who we frequently see at Speaker's Corner deciding to get violent with Uncle Sam. So within a very short space of time, you have multiple Muslims, whether that's Muslim debaters, whether that's Muslim cameramen, whether that's just random people from the crowd wanting to attack Christians. This is a constant thing that we have to deal with at Speaker's Corner. There's always the threat of violence. If you win a debate in such a way that you get them particularly upset, then there's always a risk that someone's going to kick something off. Apparently this also includes sheikhs, even sheikhs who are probably at least 60, even sheikhs who are 60 with a walking stick. Now, this sheikh is an interesting guy because we managed to find out exactly who he is, what he believes, which is quite spicy, and his response video, because this man decided it would be a good idea to explain his side of the story. Let's watch.
Well, not anyone can be patient with his provoking. He was very provocative. And that's what caused people to lose their nerves, to lose their controls. And then he takes advantage of this. You see, he has no manners. Especially, he changes the topic. When he finds out that you gave him an answer, you control him, you corner him, then he changes the topic. Instead of talking about ignorant God, as confessed in his own Bible, in Mark chapter 32, verse 13, I do not know. I mean, imagine that God says to you, I do not know. He said, only we believe that the body of Jesus died, but not Jesus. I said, so you're confusing me. So I believe that there are two Jesuses, one weak Jesus, and one God Jesus. How can you bring those two contradictory personalities in one Jesus? So when we talk about being killed, being crucified, being tortured, being humiliated, being dead, you say this is Jesus the body, but this is not Jesus the God. So I was asking, how many Jesuses you have, for God's sake? So if those are two, then we don't have Trinity, we have Fournity. Because Jesus is two, including the Father and the Holy Spirit. We have four, not three.
The sheikh has the usual criticisms of Mark 32 verse 13. What? Obviously this guy is a sheikh and a man of knowledge. but not about the Bible. So what he really means is Mark 13 verse 32, where it talks about how no one knows the hour, nor the Son, nor the angels, but only the Father. It's also obvious because he goes on to say how Christians think that Jesus is God and human. So he obviously knows the understanding of the different natures, but then he tries to intentionally confuse people, which is the usual Muslim trick. If you can't defend against an explanation of the Trinity, just pretend to have no idea what they're talking about. Like, Jesus is God, but he's also human. So that must mean that Jesus is the Father, who is God, who is one. That means that Jesus can't be God. Everything they say boils down to one thing. Very simple, very quick. Their understanding is that God, the term itself, or Allah, is synonymous with the term one person. As soon as you challenge that notion, all of their assumptions just fall away. They have nothing left after that. They cannot understand why you don't believe that God is just one person. They think that when you say God is one, that must be in the same way that human beings are one. Namely, that one human being is equal to one person. This is obvious what we find in creation. But unfortunately, Allah is not like anything in creation, which you would think would mean they would have no problem with the idea of Allah therefore being more than one person. But they do, because Allah is supposed to be like his creation, apparently. On the one hand, he's not like the creation, but on the other hand, he has to be one person, just like we're also one person. So what is it? Is he like his creation or is he not? Muslims will flip and switch between these two to get whatever point they want to make across. Doesn't matter if they contradict themselves in one argument from another. Hopefully, you won't notice that, and therefore they can get away with saying it.
First, he was trying to elevate me as sheikh, and he was calling me sheikh. I believe that this sheikh has knowledge. He wants to tell his audience that I'm debating with someone who has a great knowledge, but I defeated him. The authority in the Hyde Park sets the condition that you can speak, you can curse, you can insult, you can abuse, you can swear at people, but don't touch. But they should be understanding that this kind of provoking and swearing and abusing and insulting, it will automatically be ending up with clash. So when a person is behaving like this, he should be observed and should be given a fine of being banned from the Hyde Park for 3 months, for example, if he is very provocative. But there are people who are behind all of those insultings to Islam and to the Prophet in the Hyde Park. We know who they are. But the man doesn't want to take advantage of your leave, saying, he ran away. Look, guys, he is running away from me. This man is agenda. So by this, he can tie you to him, and then he keep provoking you, showing people that victory is his. The problem, he is insulting our religion, our prophet, making mockery of him, while he is surrounded by tens of Muslims. And he is subjecting himself to any risk of physical clash, because not all people can be controlling their nerves for this kind of provoking. A good brother whose name is Shamsi, before this clash, he came to me and advised me not to give any attention to that person, whose name is Bob the Gob.
The best part of this whole response video is that he thinks that he can shift the blame here because he's obviously the person that initiated this. He was the guy that got physical with Bob, not the other way around. He says, well, okay, he was obviously provoking me. It's like, how? How does that even work? You're talking about religion. Everything that we're going to say to each other is going to be provocative. You can't talk about religious opinions without being provocative. The very idea that I don't believe Islam is true is provocative to Muslims. The idea that Muslims don't believe in Christianity is provocative to Christians. But that's not an excuse for me to get violent with anyone, and it's not an excuse for me to lose my temper. In fact, someone who is much, much, much younger than the Sheikh, I can tell you now I've never lost my temper with any Muslim saying anything about Jesus, anything about the prophets, anything about my Bible. And the reason is because I'm more mature than that and I know how to handle my temper. This Sheikh doesn't know that, and so for that reason he needs to make excuses, which is, I was provoked. Couldn't help myself. I was forced to push Bob. Allah made me do it. And this ultimately is just the showings of a weak man that doesn't really know how to defend his worldview, who tries to critique Christianity, but when it's rebuked, he gets upset, He gets angry. Bob said that Muhammad had failed him. Evidently, Muhammad had failed him because he couldn't control his temper. Here's a part of his little response video where he says that, yes, I get that Speaker's Corner is a place of debate. You can swear, you can shout, you can say what you want, just as long as you don't get physical, as long as you don't touch people. But then immediately says, well, what would you expect to happen? How can I control my behavior when this man is saying things that have upset my feelings? This is what it looks like to be a weak person. So this person is well known apparently on the internet, particularly for having condemned the Jews, which I'm not too surprised about. There is a video you can find, which is the Sheikh saying that the Holocaust was divine punishment. Yep, he really said that. This video of him saying 9/11 was an inside job. Particularly speaking, this man is just a incredibly unpleasant, anti-Semitic racist. And how on earth this guy hasn't been called out on this stuff yet, I have no idea. But as always, it's good to contrast. It's always good to look at the situation as it is and on a high note and think about what this really means. What this really means is that Islam Dawah itself is falling apart. Dawah in the park is done. People can't debate. Muslims are running away from debates. They're telling visitors to stay away from people, don't talk to them, don't listen to them, because otherwise their faith will be questioned and they won't have answers, and the Muslim da'is can no longer help them. On the contrast, we're seeing a revival in the Christians at the Speaker's Corner, who are coming there educated, knowledgeable, talented, well-spoken, who are passionate and willing to defend their faith with any speaker, no matter whether they're the top da'is, whether it's Muhammad Hijab, whether it's Ali Dawah, whether it's Shamsi, whoever it might be, no problem. We have no issues with talking to them whatsoever. And many Muslims do actually ask us to talk to them, but we go to talk to them and it just breaks down. They don't want to have a chat with us, and so we say, hey, look, there's your champion. There's the guy you thought was a respected scholar, because many of these tourists, they think that these Muslim da'is are scholars. They think they're men of knowledge. I mean, I know the Sheikh is meant to be a man of knowledge, but realistically speaking, it doesn't matter how much training you have. If you're a popular figure, you're considered a scholar in Islam. Some of the biggest scholars in Islam today are Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah. Neither of them, I believe, actually have the qualifications to consider themselves as such, nor do they actually say they are as such. Christians will continue to point out the issues in Islam. Muhammad was not a morally good person, that the Quran has not been perfectly preserved, that there are philosophical problems with your Aqidah. We'll keep pointing these things out to you every Sunday, if not more than every Sunday, online as well. And we can talk about our faith as something that you have as an alternative that is better. We don't have issues with our scholars lying to us that the Bible has been perfectly preserved. We don't have issues where we claim to affirm other scriptures and then blatantly the scriptures contradict ours. We don't have that. Instead, what we have is the Son of Man, the second person of the Trinity who knows all things, who is omniscient. He knew you before you were born. He knew who you would be, and even though he has all things, he still desires you. So leave Islam. Put falsehood behind you. Don't follow the sayings and the desires of 7th century Arabian caravan robber. Instead, turn to the one who is perfect, the one who gave his life willingly for you. Not because of anything you've done or because you are innately worthy yourself, but rather because you're desired enough by God. Come to Jesus Christ. God bless.